Oh, it is 10:31.
Yeah.
Let's begin. Okay.
Good morning, everybody. I hope you can hear me, right? And so welcome to Math Department Colloquium, right? Actually, this is our second colloquium for fall semester, right? Actually, this is also the second colloquium about the actuarial sciences, right? So we had one last week, and this is the second one, right? And because of this COVID and the format is going to be slightly different, majority of the attendees are going to be online. They are going to connect through Zoom, and a few of us are in this room. Unfortunately, the camera is not pointing towards them, so you can't see them, right? And so what we are going to do with this one is, because this is a virtual conference, we will try to hold our questions until the end, right? So we will let the speaker do the complete lecture, right? And we will have a Q&A session at the very end, right? When it happens, you can switch on your microphones and the videos at the very end, and you can directly ask the question from the speaker. So until then, I wish you can kind of switch off your microphones, right? Then be any kind of disturbances, right? And so we're going to go ahead, right, and introduce our today's speaker. Actually, today's speaker is Mr. Tuttle, right? He's a retired actuary, and currently he's actually an adjunct instructor of the Rocky Mountain.
I should make a co-host name.
Okay, so he's actually a adjunct instructor of the math department at Rocky Mountain College in Arts and Design. I just got to know actually he's teaching mathematics for art students, right? Which is a very interesting thing. And prior to his retirement, he was a senior vice president and pricing actuary for Renaissance Reinsurance Company in New York. He also is a fellow of the Casualty Actuary Society, a member of the American Academy of Actuaries, and a chartered property and casualty underwriter. And he's spoken at many different conferences, right? And in topics such as copyright and teaching and computer simulation, and especially after teaching at the Rocky Mountain, he has teaching something called mathematics of love, right? So. And today, actually, he's going to talk about, not about mathematics of love, it maybe, right? But data sciences in the actuary profession. So without any kind of further ado, I'll let Mr. Tuttle go ahead and kind of do his presentation, right? So I'm going to stop share. Right? So Jerry, I mean, go ahead and you are more than, go ahead and share your PowerPoint.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I don't know if you can see it, but I'm proudly wearing my FGCU actuarial shirt.
That's great.
I certainly hope you're going to reconstitute the actuarial club. So this is a follow-up to last week's talk by Wayne Fisher. I hope most of you were able to attend that. And I want to say a few words about Wayne. So I first was introduced to Wayne not in person, but when I was taking my actuarial exams, and two of his published papers I had to study for the exams. So that tells you something about Wayne. Then the next time I was introduced to him was because he was president of the Casualty Actuarial Society, which of course very few people will get the honor of doing that. Wayne is also a member of the Society of Actuaries, which is the group for life, pension, and health actuaries, which I am not a member of. And Wayne is a board member of his insurance company. So Wayne has a breadth and depth of experience and knowledge about the actuarial profession in the industry. And although I think it's somewhat random that he happens to be your neighbor, you as FGCU are really fortunate that you have someone of his caliber who has adopted you. Okay, so I want to talk about actuaries and data science. Many of you are probably well aware that data science is a very hot field. A lot of talented math and computer people are going into it. Actuaries are also involved in data science, and I'm going to tell you some of the ways that we do that. So first, what is an actuary? I'm not going to redo Wayne's talk, but actuaries are the mathematicians of the insurance industry. We deal with the financial impact of risk and uncertainty. We measure it, develop and validate models, and communicate them, which is important. So we are looking for people with good communication skills. These may be the two most famous actuaries some of you are familiar with. I don't know how many people saw About Schmidt with Jack Nicholson, and Ben Stiller, Along Came Polly. Ben identified himself in the movie as a risk analyst, but he was certainly pretty similar to an actuary. Insurance is a very unique business for a couple of reasons. One is we don't know the cost of our product when we sell it. And two is we don't sell our product to everyone. We're not required to. Not unlike colleges. You do not sell your product, which is admission, to everyone. I don't think that's a surprise to the faculty and the students here. But this is very different than most other products you can think of. Then a big difference between the insurance business and most everyone else is we don't charge the same price to everyone.
Jerry,
yes.
Can you kind of lift the microphone a little bit towards the mouth? I mean, yeah.
Oh, okay. Is that better?
Yeah, much better.
Okay, thank you. We do not charge the same price to everyone. You would certainly not go into the supermarket and expect to pay a different price for milk than the person in front of you. But we do not charge the same price to everyone. And this is required by law. And in insurance, rates may not be unfairly discriminatory. They may be discriminatory. What they may not be is unfairly discriminatory. And what does that mean? A rate is unfairly discriminatory to a group of risks if the rate does not bear a reasonable relationship to the expected loss experience among the risks. So it is okay to charge, say, men and women a different price for their insurance if, as a group, their expected claims experience is different. So these are some of the reasons we're just a very unique business. So now, what is data science? One pictorial description is it's the Venn diagram. It's the intersection among math and statistics, computer science and programming, and subject matter knowledge. And data science is the intersection right in the middle. So it's these three things. Interestingly, whoever designed this slide, which is not me, considers this area a danger area. People who know about computers, but not the subject matter, there's some danger there. But a better definition of data science is it's the academic subject that attempts to extract meaningful insights from data, translating into tangible business value. So it's a very applied field. It's not a theoretical field, and it's related to business. If there's no business value to it, it's meaningless. There are many common examples of data science in everyday life. Any internet search engine is using data science techniques. Targeted advertising, we'll get coupons from the supermarket. So that goes back to my original slide. People who buy a left shoe often buy a right shoe. People who buy peanut butter often buy jelly. There's a folklore that Target stores once sent diaper coupons to a pregnant teenager. The father was just incensed, and he stormed the store saying, "How could you do this to my teenager? She's not pregnant." But it turns out she was. And the data scientists had recognized this based on purchases she had made. Moneyball and sports analytics. Every major league sports team nowadays has a data scientist of some sort on staff. At least one actuary is doing this. I'm not interested in singles dating at the moment, but anyone who is, singles matching is much more scientific than it used to be. Data science is used to diagnose diseases, healthcare recommendations, crime prediction, terrorist forecasts. And here's an interesting one. There's an academic paper out there. Someone has analyzed Trump's tweets solely for the purpose of asking which tweets did he write and which tweets did his staff write. So these are some of the examples of data science. Now let's get closer to actuaries. There's a quote that actuaries were among the first data scientists, and really the sort of things data scientists do, actuaries have been doing forever, although not with the same techniques. We are generally strongest at the math statistics and the domain knowledge. We spend a lot of time studying insurance, economics, accounting, and so on, besides the math and statistics. If you remember that bottom circle in the Venn diagram, the domain knowledge is very important. Data scientists are often stronger in computer science than the math. And the actuarial exams now include quite a bit on data science. And these are some of the topics on the actuarial exams nowadays: generalized linear models, k-nearest neighbors, k-means clustering, Bayes classifier, decision trees, random forest, principal component analysis, and predictive and analytic specialty. So if you can make your way through the two specific early actuarial exams, not the first two, but I think it's numbers 3 and 4. You will have quite a bit of data science with a mathematical bent in your background, and you'll be in good shape with data science. Before we get too far into it, one of the things data scientists often do, and I have not seen in my statistics travels, is we randomly split our data into a training set versus a testing set. It's often like 80% of your data trains the model and 20% of it tests it. And then you test it only on the 20%. So I've fit a linear regression to my 80% of the blue squares, but then I test it on the red circles, which the model didn't see. And I just don't recall this at all in my regression or even econometrics classes. But this is very common in data science. And if you're teaching regression, even in an algebra course, you might think about this. Here are some quick actuarial examples of data science techniques. But first of all, if predictive modeling refers to estimating insurance costs, then actuaries have been doing this forever. Today, predictive modeling is computationally intensive, often testing all possible permutations of variables and transformations. And that's why data science is really kind of a current academic subject. In 20 or 30 years ago, there just wasn't the computer power, both in speed and storage, to test permutations of lots and lots and lots and lots of variables. The two broad categories in data science are prediction and classification. Classification is predicting a category. And when I first heard about that didn't sound very exciting to me. But then I discovered how it's being used in actuarial work, and classification is quite an important branch of work. Prediction often involves types of regression, but the traditional linear regression is being replaced by more flexible generalized linear models. And I'll talk briefly about this. So a few areas that use classification, decision trees are used in underwriting. Underwriting means selecting the individual customer to insure. Remember I said that we don't have to sell to every customer. The actuary decides how much to charge. The underwriter decides which customers to actually offer the insurance to. Clustering is used in developing territories. I'll talk about that. And principal component analysis is used in detecting fraud. I'll talk about that. For insurance rating, we group similar customers into classes. We don't charge each and every customer an individual rate. We group customers into classes and charge you a rate for the class. So here's a group of heterogeneous customers. I'd like to put them in a number of common classes. So after classification, here's a common class. I've got mostly people of the same little blue color, but I did get a couple of incorrectly in there. So classification is rarely perfect, but that's the goal. You're probably most familiar with automobile insurance. Certainly in Florida, everyone has a car. I grew up in New York City where you did not have a car. And among the ways we classify you for auto insurance is age, gender, what kind of territory you're in, marital status, miles driven, and so on. So you can think of this as like a Rubik's Cube for age, gender, and say territory. Everyone fits into one of these cubes somewhere, and so there's a rate for that cube. Because we have more than 3 categories, our cube is more than 3 dimensions, so we have an n-dimensional cube. But even within an n-dimensional cube, there's a lot of variability. And the company wants to choose the better than average customers within each class to make a profit. So now let's talk about GLM, generalized linear models. Traditionally, we use linear regression or a form of rating which essentially was linear regression, although we didn't call it that. And our class pricing was multiplicative. So we might have had a base rate of $100, and then there are various age possibilities, and maybe age I got a 1.5 factor, and gender J got a 1.2 factor, and territory K got a 1.4 factor, and we'd multiply all these together times the $100 rate. That disregards the interactions between classes. So if maybe this age is high because one of the genders is high. So obviously there are interactions among these. They're not all independent variables. And there are linear regression assumptions on normality and common variances that truthfully we did not pay attention to. GLMs consist of a wider range of models, and now the response model, the response variable is assumed to be a member of the exponential family. So that gives you just a lot more possibilities on how to create those models. And so a number of companies are using GLMs to do their classification rating. Some other things GLMs are used for is telematics. Perhaps you've heard about companies that'll install a device in your car and measure how frequently or quickly you brake. That provides a lot of data. Another way telematics can be used is we can install a device in your home and see how often that home is vacant or how often the heat is on. Underwriting scorecards, how likely a claim is to settle far above its initial estimate. So these are some examples of where GLMs are used. Let's move to decision trees. Decision trees, and these are not the decision trees of probability. This is not the probability tree of what is the probability of with 5 children having exactly 2 girls. That's a different kind of tree. In a decision tree, the variables, you have a number of independent variables, and they're sequentially split into categories, and they continue to be sequentially split until every observation finally falls into one final category. And the splitting is done by the computer, doing all possible permutations, both on the choice of the variables to split and the value of the variables to do the split. So here's a very simple example. Suppose my first split is I have a telematics score of less than 8 or greater than or equal to 8. If it's greater than or equal to 8, I go down one path. If it's less than 8, I go down another path. The next path is how many years of renewal do I have? Is it less than 3 or greater than or equal to 3? Then I go down another path. What's the telematics score again? What's the occupation? And eventually I decide to stop splitting. And now every customer is in exactly one of these categories. And depending on what category they're in, the majority of the category tells me for that customer, yes, offer this customer insurance, or no, don't offer this customer insurance. So this is a decision tree. There's lots of possible variables. This one uses number of years renewed, occupation, premium payment history, telematics, and so on. And this is a nice technique to help the underwriter decide who should offer the insurance to. Next, I want to move to clustering. Remember, I told you that one of the variables in auto insurance is where you live. Where is your car garaged? So not surprisingly, people in Miami will pay a different rate for that than people in rural Florida, you know, where the speed limit is no greater than 25, and a lot of people drive tractors. But in truth, we created these territories on a map, we as an industry, not as scientifically as perhaps we should. Perhaps no differently than the way voting districts were created. So perhaps there are more scientific ways to assign territories in the first place. And so one author has taken population density as one variable and claim frequency as another, and plotted these points, and then used a clustering technique to ask, only based on the distance of points from each other, what are some good ways to put these points in clusters? So here there's no dependent variable. We're not looking for claims experience to predict. But here the clustering technique, which is also iterative. This starts with taking 3 points at random and calling those potential centroids, and then asking how far is each point from that centroid. That gives you a first shot at clusters. Now you have some potential clusters, you have a new centroid, and you keep repeating this until they don't change. So that's how the technique of clustering works. It's also somewhat computational intensive. it would be hard to do this by hand once you had a lot of points and a lot of clusters. Next, I'm going to talk briefly on principal component analysis, which is used among other places in fraud detection. Principal component analysis is used when you have a large number of independent variables and you ask, do I really need all those independent variables? Can I use a smaller number? And can I create a smaller number that are mutually uncorrelated, preserving as much variability as possible? To digress a minute, what is auto fraud? There can be staged accidents, inflated medical or auto repair bills. There can be collusion among medical providers or body shops. And these are very hard to detect by claim examiners. This time the data has no dependent variable. The data does not say, yes, this claim had fraud or not, because we're not really sure. And much fraud is undetected. But the data is often ordinal with a suspicion level. So the claims examiner can say, you know, I sort of suspect this is a medical provider that seems to be involved in a lot of fraud. I can't prove it, but I'm going to give him a suspicion level rating. And so the goal is an overall fraud suspicion score. But the number of variables may be enormous. And I played with one with 80 independent variables. And that's really way too many to do anything with. But principal component analysis reduced the 80 to like 8, and the 8 was manageable. And by the way, it's been a lot of years since I took linear algebra. I scratched my head at the time. Other than matrix algebra, is there a use to linear algebra in the real world? And I'd really love to go back to my professor of 50 plus years ago and tell him, I finally found one. Principal component analysis uses orthogonal transformations and eigenvectors from linear algebra. So if you're teaching linear algebra and someone asks, is there any real value to them? Here's one of them. Credit scoring. You've probably heard of credit scoring. Credit scoring is a numerical score of a person's credit worthiness. And ideally, it correlates with claims experience and provides additional predictive ability beyond the traditional rating variables. If it provided no additional predictive ability, it would have no use. But hopefully it's adding something to our age, gender, and so on. It's explicitly permitted in Florida by statute. It is not permitted in some states, but it is in Florida. It's been criticized as unfair to minorities and low-income people, although analysts dispute that. And this uses variables like debt to asset ratio. So what is my debt versus how much money do I have in the bank? What is my history of late payments, and so on. And the theory is that these financial measures bear a relationship to my claims experience. Many techniques are used to come up with a credit score, such as the 4 I've just talked about: clusters, trees, GLM, principal component. And here the goal is to come up with a loss ratio, which is lost dollars divided by premium, as a function of all these variables. Credit scoring is rarely used to determine the price, but it's often used as part of the decision whether or not to offer the insurance. Interestingly, and this is true just in data science in general, there's lots of publicly available databases out there to play with. And for example, there's something called a Kaggle competition. Give me some credit. There's a credit risk database for you to play with. It's not an insurance database, but there's lots of credit customers, and generally you're predicting defaults on credit cards and so on. I'm actually playing with one now for a class I'm taking in data science. This database is kind of unique because it's imbalanced. And imbalanced means the majority of my customers do not default. Very few do default. And therefore, I can kind of do nothing. I can predict no one will default. And then I'll be correct, say 90% of the time, because that's what the data is. But that's of no value at all. The goal is to predict the 10% that do default. And that's quite a different challenge. I need to do something to unbalance the imbalance. Lastly, quickly, I want to talk about text analysis. Usually we think of data as numerical and neatly captured in fields, but text is also data. And free-form text is just a potential goldmine of information, but requires a considerable effort to extract these gold nuggets. So beginning with text is full of misspellings, synonyms. Words have stems like ing and ed. So loving and loved are really part of the same stem word as love. So in text analysis, you need to correct the misspellings. You need to de-stem. Then you look for frequency of words, and you look for groups of words that appear together. So now how is this used in practice? Of course, insurance people are always concerned with what kinds of claims are occurring. So the designer of the database may have decided water might be a good value of a kind of claim to capture. But within water, what's going on? Are the claims water and basement, water and ceiling, or something else? And it would take text analysis to dig into the narrative description of the claim to dig out these things and to decide what the trend is. So we're interested in what words signal potential claim, large claim amounts. This is also used in asking how people feel about insurance ads. So we've all seen lots of insurance ads. Geico has a very unique way of doing their ads. Progressive has a very unique way. Liberty Mutual has a very unique way. And those companies are certainly curious about asking, how do people feel about those ads? So identifying sentiments in customer surveys and tweets are important in text analysis. And once again, there's a Florida statute involving text analysis. The Florida statute requires that insurance policies pass a readability test. They can't be too obtuse. And Wayne and I no doubt remember when the New York fire insurance policy was, I think, 165 words in a single sentence. And who could read through that? But Florida requires a readability score before you can use a policy. And text analysis is one way of doing that scoring. Here are some good references on data science, particularly for actuarial work. The James book is actually on the actuarial syllabus. Here's a book specifically on actuarial science. We also test data visualization. There's a lot of fun things going on with data science in summarizing your data in interesting visual ways. There are things you can do in data science nowadays far beyond what you can do in Excel, and that's among the things we test. That concludes my remarks. I think we have a little time for questions. And so I'll stop the share.
Let me try to go to gallery view so everybody can kind of, if you want to switch, if you have a question, please switch on your microphone, and also I hope you switch on your video too and ask questions from Jerry. Dr. Brooks has a question actually. Even though you cannot see her, you might be able to hear her.
Okay, do you have any insight or advice about the data science programs that are out there, about their value versus maybe a student just studying math and statistics and then kind of learning ad hoc on the way? Or is it maybe worth for graduate study maybe?
For someone who wants a data science career? I'm sorry, I heard the question, but I don't know if you heard my response to it. Are you asking for someone who's interested in the data science career, or someone who just wants to learn data science?
Well, either data science or even in somebody who's interested in the actuary profession. Benefit to pursue a graduate, like a master's degree in data science.
There's a ton of free resources. Coursera gives free courses. There's lots of YouTube tutorials. It's not difficult to pick up the basics of these techniques on your own. Even just getting a book. The last book I listed was R and Data Mining. That's a pretty easy thing. You do need to learn a data science language, and the choice is either R or Python. You don't want to do this in Excel. I'm a math person, as you can tell, and the stereotype is math people like R, computer people like Python. Either one is fine, but you do need to learn R. But if you know any computer language, I think moving to R is pretty quick. And I hope the school will offer some data science in the future. Uh-oh, this could be hard.
No, I don't think so.
Hi, Wayne.
Jerry, I thought that was a very solid presentation in terms of the sophistication of the type of analyses actuaries are doing in insurance companies. I just wanted to emphasize one aspect. The insurance industry is very fragmented. Oh, yes, there's some big companies out there, but there's a lot of new companies, insurtech companies and other ones that are trying to get a niche started. And as they try to position their product, everything Jerry just said is what they try to exploit to give them an edge. And that's exactly where the actuaries come in. And that's why the field is in such demand right now, because everybody wants to outsmart the other person in terms of, I can segment this class using the tools Jerry described in order to pick out those clients, those potential clients on which I can make money and offer them value too at the same time, because I'm charging them a little less and still offering them the product that they need. And that's why that everything Jerry just said is in this competitive world is why actuaries are so valuable in insurance companies, because they all want an edge against the other person in this fragmented industry. I just wanted to emphasize that point from, slightly different perspective, but everything Jerry said, those are the tools that the companies need in order to execute their strategies. Thank you.
Thanks, Wayne.
Any other questions for Mr. Tracker? I do have one question, actually. This might not be directly related to your presentation, but how do you kind of look at once in a lifetime events like, for example, COVID? None of us expected COVID. I think that to my knowledge, the last time we had something like that was in 1918. I think it was Spanish flu, right? So how does these kind of things actually factor into like the calculations of the premiums and in actuarial field?
Okay, that's a good question, and I've dealt with that in other contexts. Most of my career was in reinsurance. We insured insurance companies, and really only for the larger values. And invariably, our client would come to us, and they'd have one unusual claim, and there's always a good story behind it, some fluke thing that you'd never expect to happen. And well, certainly that'll never happen again. And so, Jerry, take it out of the data and do your analysis without the data. And so that's when I would sit down with the underwriter and we would talk about it, because the underwriter has a different expertise with these than me. And the issue was always, is this something that could truly never happen again? Or is it something that's sort of symptomatic of something that, well, maybe that one won't happen again, but something else similar to it will happen again? And that's a hard decision to make. And sometimes I'd throw the data out, particularly if the policy language was changed so that, yes, that one cannot happen again because we're not going to cover it. But the other possibility is, you know, something similar could happen again. And maybe I should be throwing in a small probability for it to happen again. I'll give you a better numerical example. I was providing $30 million of limit of liability coverage for a company that had never had a claim greater than 20 million. So if I simply looked at the $20 million claims and did my actuarial mathematics, I'd charge you one price. But they certainly could have a $30 million claim. And so I consistently was including a charge for that extra 10 million, although they've never had one, but they could. And then sure enough, one year they did. And they were all upset about it because, well, we never had a $30 million claim. And I was just fine. Because I had been saying all along, sooner or later you're going to have one. I've charged you this little bit for it, and I'm okay with that. But it's a very hard decision, and two people can easily make different decisions on it, and it's hard to say who's right and who's wrong. But that's part of what makes actuarial a fun place to be. I mean, we're not just doing arithmetic. We're making hard decisions on real events where there's no right answer, or if there is a right answer, it may take you 10 years to find out.
Okay. Thank you, Jerry. Any other questions for Ms. Chapman? Okay. Seems like no other questions. So let me try to take a couple of minutes, couple of seconds and talk about like now in the last week, we had Mr. Wayne Fisher and his associates actually did a presentation. It is also on actuarial sciences. So if you fail to attend that colloquium, actually we have it in the recorded form, right? And if you would like to see that one, please send an email to Dr. Brian Johnson. I mean, like he will send you a link and you can go ahead and watch the whole thing. And also, if you would like to subscribe to our, give 1 second. We have our website. I mean, like if you can go to our website, and especially if you have a kind of smartphone, go ahead and scan that one, and you can kind of sign up for future colloquiums, right? And so we will start to send you like emails. We are not going to send you anything else. Don't worry about spams or anything like that. We will only send you the information about the future colloquium. So go ahead and sign up if you can, right? Then you will know like what kind of colloquiums we have and so on and so forth. And
Monica, Brittany has a question in the chat.
can you go ahead and ask that one, Emily?
She just says she has a question.
Brittany,
Yeah.
go ahead, Brittany.
Yeah. Hey, good morning. I actually had a question for Mr. Tuttle. Sorry, I wasn't quick enough before you moved on. So going back to what you just said about making these high-risk decisions, I was wondering, there's sort of like this urban legend about how stressful actuarial sciences can be. And I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about, you know, making these decisions in terms of like stress and how do you manage that, because anyone getting into the career, I feel, would need to be concerned with that. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that.
Okay, thank you for the question.
Yeah.
First of all, you don't make $10 million decisions right out of school.
Right. I hope not.
Hopefully you join a company with a good actuarial program with other people at your level, and a supervisor who's been around for a while. And like anything else, you need to learn the business. You start off doing kind of routine calculations and making routine decisions. That's not to say there's no stress in being an actuary. There's stress in passing the exams. They're not easy exams, but they're not brain surgery either. I have a master's degree, but not a PhD degree. I was not smart enough to get a PhD, which I fully admit. But the exams are hard, but they're not brain surgery. It takes a combination of you know, some intelligence and some stick-to-itiveness. Many people don't have the stick-to-itiveness. So the exams are a stressor. I don't think an actuarial job is normally as stressful as many other jobs. Certainly in the early days of your career, you're not getting phone calls at 2 in the morning that we need this decision. Obviously, if you're the president of your company, that's different, but not too many of us are going to do that. But truthfully, there's some stress. Sometimes an actuary will make an unpopular decision, and management and underwriting may not be happy with it, and there's some pressure to change it. And sometimes there's a range of possibilities, sort of like a confidence interval. And I make a point estimate. Am I sure my point estimate is accurate? No. I'm certainly willing to move, you know, a little bit to one side. There's a line in the sand, and I'm not going to move over that line. Hopefully, you've got a management that understands that. So I won't tell you there's no stress. There's some stress on the timing of projects. You know, I need this by Wednesday, 4 p.m. Maybe you'll need to work overtime to do that. But I think it's a lot less stressful than many other occupations you can think of. So that's my opinion on that. Wayne, you want to jump in?
Well, yes. Can people hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I think that's exactly right. And if you think about the pressure a junior associate at a law firm faces, 80-hour work weeks, or an intern or a resident in medicine, I think we're much more 9 to 5 than that, although you go home and you have to study. But that's a different animal. The one point we didn't make either last week or this week, which it just occurred to me as I was Jerry was talking about the exams and so forth, is that the actuarial profession is somewhat unique in that you get hired. Hopefully you passed one exam, if not two, while you're in school. And your progress, at least the first few years, is a lot based on passing the exams and the technical work you do in your department. And as such, it's a great equalizer in terms of opportunity. Everybody's got the same shot at passing the exams. It's your technical work that you can do, the way you can communicate it to whoever is the audience, whether it's the underwriting management, the project team for a new focused underwriting program they're coming out with. Anything like that, you can distinguish yourself by your technical work, the way you can present it and communicate it. And that's pretty much a level playing field for everybody. After that, it's based on how you do those things, sure, but it's a great entry level profession in that regard.
Thanks, Wayne. And moreover, very few fields have anything equivalent. In most fields, the new person is sort of scratching their head and they're asking, what do I need to do to get ahead? Well, it's pretty clear for actuaries, at least half of what you need to get ahead is study and pass these exams. And in studying, you're learning the tools of the trade to become a more proficient actuary and to get the more interesting assignments. You get the more interesting assignments because you've got the academic background through the exams to do them. I was doing certain assignments as sort of a mid-level person because I had passed, exam number N, and the people around me had not.
Thank you, Jerry. I mean, like even in future, I mean, like we are planning to kind of bring Jerry and Wayne and kind of give more talks. Like, so if you want to kind of tune in, like please go ahead and sign up, right? The sign up web address is right over there. And sign up. And in addition to those kind of talks, I mean, like we have like the other kind of talks in spring semester. We are planning to bring 2 faculty members, one from the NOAA Southeastern and one from Florida State University, right? So please go ahead and if you sign up, we can kind of let you know about it, right? And also, if you are kind of a new here, right, I would like to kind of remind you about like the scholarship fund, which was created by Mr. Wayne Fisher. That one is actually to kind of encourage students to take the actuarial sciences like exams. Like for example, I mean, like if you pass the first exam, right, and you will get the exam fees for that one. Not only that one, you will get some seed money to do the second one, right? So this is actually a generous support from Mr. Fisher, right? So I hope you guys are going to use that one. Currently, I think so far one student has done it, but we expect more and more students to do this one in future, right?
Yes.
Okay. So finally, I would like to thank Mr. Tuttle for taking this time and during this difficult time and kind of connecting through like Zoom and kind of trying to encourage our students to kind of pursue this interesting field, right? And I also would like to thank Mr. Fisher, right, who has been kind of very involved with our math department and try to rekindle this interest of the actuarial sciences within our students. So I would like to thank both of you for taking time and kind of trying to support our university and our department. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. And I'd like to conclude and say, go Eagles.
Thank you. So finally, I'd like to thank both attendees who are connecting through Zoom as the few people who are in this meeting. So we hope to see you in future. Thank you very much for attending.